Okay. We are going to be doing the dinosaurs and also the things that weren't dinosaurs, but were alive in the Cretaceous period today. And then I'm going to make sure, or at least hopefully, I'll answer all of the questions that you had from that writing prompt from the other week. But for today's opener, this is something that we mentioned when we did the last section of notes. Why were the dinosaurs increasingly large in the Jurassic and the Cretaceous, and why did mammals become increasingly smaller through this time period? For the dinosaurs, for the reptiles, in the Jurassic, the plant life changed drastically, and much of it became more nutritious. So not only did you have better food for them to eat that had more calories essentially in it, but also we had more plants in general, you had more oxygen. This allowed your herbivorous reptiles, particularly the ornithixians, to get big. They just kept eating. They didn't run out of food, even though that most of them needed well over a few 100 pounds of food every day. There was plenty of it. So they became larger. And then the dinosaurs that fed off of them, the theropods, their food source was getting bigger, so it allowed them to get larger as well. As far as mammals were concerned, in order to keep from being eaten, they became nocturnal. They tended to burrow. A lot of them would hibernate, and they became smaller and smaller, and they were less of a target, especially for your larger carnivores. All right, Cretaceous dinosaurs. You're going to know a bunch of these. You may not know their specific names, but you're going to recognize them. The most diverse of all of the time periods was the Cretaceous, the largest number of differing species of dinosaurs at the same time. The tallest of all of them is a specific type of sauropod. The smaller sauropods were replaced by what were called hadrosaurs, your duck-billed dinosaurs, like Parasaurolophus. But your larger sauropods, they made it through and eventually evolved into something called a titanosaur, and we're going to talk about a couple of those later on. The largest of the carnivores, the Carcharodontosaurs, things like T-Rex, things like Spinosaurus, they also developed in the Cretaceous. So in the Cretaceous, we had the absolute largest number of differing dinosaurs, the diversity, but we also had the biggest of them as mammals were getting increasingly smaller. If I do go too fast, because I don't have y'all to slow me down, just pause. I'm trying to get both you guys and chemistry done in my one little off period. So it'll be available for you guys whenever you're ready to do this. Okay. Yesterday, we talked about an early predecessor to what you think of as an ankylosaur. Ankylosaurs were ornithixians. Okay, they had armored backs. Some had more of a horn-like shape on the plate. Some of it was more of like a nub on the back of it. This particular one is the one that has the giant club at the end of the tail that it would have used to defend itself from something that was trying to eat it. The one on the right, this is Parasaurolophus. This is the one that we do know the sound of, and I will play that for you towards the end when I get to it. This was a hadrosaur. They did have teeth. Most ornithixians that had beaks, like Ankylosaur and like the Triceratops, they didn't have teeth. They just sort of chomped up the plants like the turtle did. Whereas the hadrosaurs had the most of all of the teeth. It wasn't like a carnivore's tooth, but it was meant for crunching up the plant life at the time. And the Parasaurolophus is very distinguished by this big horn, this big resonating chamber that comes off the back of its head. And then that is what we've analyzed and then run through computers to get the sound that they make. And like I said, I'll do that here in just a little bit. I can get my screen to go. We should know this one. This is the infamous Triceratops. All ceratopsians had this big frill Some of them had horns that were along the edge of the frill. Triceratops did not. It had the two over the eyes and then the one on the nose. Triceratops had the largest head to body size ratio. Its head was a third the length of its entire body. These would have been herd animals. They would have nested. They were very, very, not like cow beefy, but bulky, like most of the ornithixians. They were very heavy. They were not the heaviest of all of them, but they were, like most ornithixians, they were quadrupeds. The next one on here, oh, that's a pterodactyl in the back. That's obviously not a triceratops. This is a type of pachycephalosaur. It's Stegosaurus. These guys sort of look like carnivores, but they're not. They're herbivores. And they have this big, thick skull. And that's how they fought each other, I'm assuming, fighting over the lady pachycephalosaurs. Very similar to the way that sheep will butt heads. The bighorn sheep, the rams, butt heads as they're fighting over who gets to win the ladies. They were about 6 feet long. You don't necessarily need to know specific heights and weights unless they've been highlighted. I won't ask that. It's just I know that a lot of you are curious. This is Breviparipus. This is a titanosaur. This was the tallest of all of the titanosaurs. It was not the heaviest one, though. That was Argentinosaurus, which we'll do that here in a bit. This particular sauropod, we don't have any bones. The only thing we have is the size of its footprint. And by knowing the size of the footprint and how far apart they were from each other, we know basically the structure of the rest of their body because we can compare it to other sauropods, whether they be titanosaurs or not. This particular individual is an oviraptor. This was an omnivore. This is the infamous egg thief, that when they found the skeleton, which was almost complete, it was at a clutch of eggs that originally the people that unearthed it, the paleontologists that or the archaeologists, is it paleo? I guess it's a combination of the two. They thought it was a different species of dinosaur, and that this particular raptor was eating the eggs. Now, somehow, some way, they figured out that that wasn't true, that it actually was its own eggs and it was guarding them. They may have come across another oviraptor that the eggs were better preserved, but it's still agreed upon that this would have been an omnivore, very heavily feathered, like a lot of the raptors at the time. Still has the 3 fingers up here. You got 1, 2, and 3. That's the opposite direction. Doesn't have that infamous killing claw that you think of. This little guy is the velociraptor. Velociraptors were also heavily feathered. Jurassic Park based their velociraptor on this guy on the right, which is Deinonychus. Deinonychus, they both had killing claws. Okay, but Velociraptor was only a couple feet tall. It was little. The Deinonychus was the one that was about 6.5 foot tall, also feathered. Both of these, it is agreed upon that they did hunt in packs. With Velociraptor, it's understood that they also hunted at night. I'll talk about that when I do special adaptations after these few dinosaurs that we're doing. We don't obviously know like social interactions between these because they'd have to be alive for that, but we have found them together, and they weren't, not these two species together, but within their own kind in small groups. This guy, somebody asked about Spinosaurus. Spinosaurus was the tallest of all of the land carnivores at the time. It was, let's see, the tallest of the Jurassic was Allosaurus at about 17 feet maxed out. T-Rex, this one over here, its big brother, was about 20 feet tall at its maximum. Whereas Spinosaurus was not like head tallest, it actually was that sail on its back at 23 feet. It's understood also that these guys would hunt together. They probably were also scavengers. The olfactory section of their brain, the thing for smell, is more advanced than some other dinosaurs. And there's like Parasaurolophus back there in the background of this drawing. I had somebody ask me if they got in a fight, who would win. I know there was a series where they would fight dinosaurs not too terribly long ago. They couldn't. One was from Africa and one was from North America. They didn't ever come in contact with each other. I can tell you that T-Rex had much larger numbers for population than some of the other apex carnivores at the time. Or maybe it's just the fact that when the asteroid came down, that they were just at the right type of dirt for the preservation. But we have a whole bunch of fossils, not too many complete skeletons, but a lot more percentage-wise, population-wise for T-Rex. And it's understood that most of these would also have had feathers in some way, shape, or form. Not necessarily like Archaeopteryx, okay, but ornamental feathers, especially around the eyes. This is the Pteranodon. It had a 20-foot wingspan. Pteranodons had short tails and also had crests on their head. They would have used both of those to help steer their flight. They did have claws here. They weren't like birds where they're completely underneath in the skin. I don't think he's on here. No, that's an Elasmosaurus. Remember, both of these are not dinosaurs. They were alive at the same time. People ask me, did pteranodons have hair? We don't think so. We don't have it fossilized like we do the feathers on dinosaurs. Pteranodons and most of the other pterodactyls in the Cretaceous lost all their teeth. They still would have been carnivorous. They would have eaten smaller dinosaurs. They would have probably gotten fish out of the sea, similar to like a pelican. Elasmosaurus was the longest of all of the plesiosaurs, just under 50 feet long. Ichthyosaurs did get larger than plesiosaurs. This one had the longest neck of all of them. Most of them had around 60 bones in the neck. This one had at least 10 more. Would have been, like I said, not a dinosaur, not a fish, still breathed there. Pretty sure gave birth to live young. We just don't know with them because we haven't found any that are pregnant. We have done that with the ichthyosaurs. I said, I'm not trying to go too fast. By all means, pause it if you need to. All right, now we're getting into the weird adaptations. Like I said, if you're really interested in this, there's nothing stopping you from researching dinosaurs on your own. If I think about it on Monday, I will tell you the websites where I'm getting my stuff from. I would not trust Wikipedia. I would go to the actual real organizations for this. It's now understood that a lot of our carnivores could see at night rather well. And I almost put up like the way it looks in the skull, but I couldn't really find any that I liked. But organisms that have night vision have something called a scleral ring. And in the size of that, in relationship, most organisms have a scleral ring. It's just the difference between the size of the ring to the actual eye socket. The larger it is, the larger the chance that they're going to have some type of night vision capabilities. You have more reflection inside the eye, like cats. Amplifies it. They can see better at night. We know that velociraptors had this. We have very well preserved skulls from a lot of these carnivores. And like I said, the velociraptor was a lot smaller. This thing was only a few feet tall. Very, very heavily feathered. And like I said, most raptors were heavily feathered. Color, that we don't know. We have the imprint of the feather. We don't have the colors of the feather. All right, Jurassic Park's Dilophosaurus. That's the Dilophosaurus. Jurassic Park made it really colorful. And if you've seen the movie, this is the thing that spits poison and blinds the guy that's, oh, I don't want to ruin the movie, the guy that's trying to get the embryos out of the park. I can't remember his name. Bad guy. We have no evidence of venom. We have no evidence of poison. I don't know how that would be fossilized to begin with. But like I mentioned yesterday, if we have different reptiles that have saliva, either it be bacterial or have venom in it, then there's no reason why that could not have happened back then. We don't have any teeth that have the holes in them like snakes do to inject venom. I don't know if that would fossilize out well or not, but I researched it and I couldn't find anything like that ever. Like, this is the closest thing that was suggested with the different sites that I was looking at. And we don't know if they were this colorful. We don't know that either. We base this stuff off of modern reptiles. Somebody asked me what was the heaviest. The heaviest was another titanosaur, Argentinosaurus. They had a wide range in length, and obviously the larger they are, the heavier they are. Oops, I just had my thing crash out. There we go. So anywhere from about 170,000 pounds to about 220,000 pounds. Now, this was not the tallest one that Breviparapus was, but it was more of the upright. Argentinosaurus was actually more let's see, verticals up and down, horizontal. So it was longer and it was heavier, but it wasn't as tall. And I can't remember the height. I'd have to go back and look at it. But this compares, oh, of course, that black bar just showed up. Compares next to his foot how big this particular titanosaur would have been. That's its official name, but you don't need to know that. Largest pteranodon, Quetzalcoatlus. This thing could gobble you up. Didn't have any teeth. They think that a lot of the flying dinosaurs had pouches similar to pelicans. Obviously, that's not preserved. The bones are preserved, not the flesh. Would have been about the same height as the modern giraffe. They, though, were really not that heavy. They couldn't be if they wanted to fly. They would have had the hollow bones. This one did have a crest. I don't believe this one had a tail, though. Some of the flying dinosaurs had crests, some didn't. Some had teeth, some didn't. Some had tails and others didn't. And they all like have different specific naming that goes along with it. And I did not go that far into it. I said, you're more than welcome to research any of this that you want to on your own. Hadrosaurs. Okay. Parasaurolophus is a hadrosaur. And we'll talk about that specifically in a second. I'll play the noise for you. These are duck-billed herbivores. Okay, they're quadrupeds, but if you notice, the front legs are a lot thinner than the other herbivores, and they're shorter. So these would have stood up on hind legs, possibly to look for predators, look for better food sources. These are not aquatic swimmers, but would have been in more marshy areas. And they also had the most teeth. I still didn't look up exactly what a cheek tooth means. I know they're not sharp like carnivores. They're for crushing up the different plants that they would be eating. But yes, they had the most teeth in whichever species it was. And I didn't look up the specific species. The hadrosaur said that it had 960 of them. Most horns, had somebody ask me. You know, Triceratops had 3. Cosmoceratops had 2. Okay, I don't think that's a horn. That looks more like a, well, maybe. Would have had 2 over here, 1 on the other side. You need a better picture. But they had a whole bunch of them that were along the edges, and they didn't stick back. They sort of bent forward. They had 15 of them. Oh, excuse my stretch. Just like most ceratopsians, they had a much larger head in relationship to the rest of their body. They would have been living in herds. They would have nested their young. They didn't have teeth. They had that turtle beak. Somebody asked me about coloration, and we don't have any evidence of this because I don't know how it would fossilize, but there is a chance that if they could see ultraviolet, that the color that we would see with just the fact we see red, blue, and green, we can't see UV or infrared, that they would have been all different kinds of colors. They would have essentially glowed, not like glow in the dark, but it would appear to be a different color. We have insects that do this. We have shrimp that do this. There's also the possibility that they could have seen an infrared. I did not put that in here, but we have reptiles that see heat, things like boa constrictors, any of the constricting snakes, the pythons, they can see an infrared, so there's that possibility. Somebody asked if they could change their color like chameleons. Once again, that can't be fossilized, but it's possible. Anything that is a modern adaptation in reptiles could have also happened back with the dinosaurs. So like I said, we don't, how do we know what they look like? We have fossilized skin, but there's no color. It's been turned to stone, so we know what the scales could have looked like, the size of the scales. The colors we're basing off of modern birds and modern reptiles. The only true colors we know are the insects that are preserved in amber, and those have a lot of metallic blue and green. For sounds, the one that we do know is Parasaurolophus, and I'm going to have to change the way that I'm presenting or it echoes really bad through a recording. So we base a lot of this kind of stuff, social behavior, we base this kind of stuff on modern animals. Somebody else asked, are we going to do the Jurassic Park thing and are we going to bring them back? I sure hope not. I don't know if you'd have viable DNA from the insects in the amber to be able to do it in the first place. It's possible. It would be incredibly stupid, especially to bring back things like T-Rex and Allosaurus. And I think it'd be cool to have a Triceratops and ride around on it, but I wouldn't want to feed it and pick up after it. So I don't think we're going to make the dinosaurs again like the movie. Somebody asked about smarts. This is actually a bunch of stuff, and I already showed you the Stegosaurus and the Jurassic one. Stegosaurus had the smallest brain to body mass ratio. I'm not saying it was dumb, okay, but its brain was like the size of a Brazil nut, like literally the size of a Brazil nut, and it was 10,000 pounds. The fastest one, I did not look up how to pronounce this. Mimus, that would be Mimus. Mimus. I'm probably not saying that right. I have to actually ask the internet to pronounce most of these for me. That is calculated to be the fastest at 40 miles per hour. That would have been a carnivore. Feathers were common. All a feather is a scale. That's all it is. If you've never seen a chicken, I mean, if you look at their feet, you can see the scales. Soft. The bottoms of their feet are actually really, really soft. It's the top that's not. The longest dinosaur name is Micropachycephalosaurus. Micro, small, pachy, those are the bone-headed ones. Ceph means head. And then saurus is lizard, is what that translates to. So it would have been a little one. I don't think it means it had a little head. It was just the bone-headed ones. It would have been a small one. The smartest dinosaur. So the largest brain to body size is Troodon. This was a carnivore. Size of us. Most dinosaurs were the size of people, about 6 feet, give or take. Lots of them had feathers. Like I said, the coloration, we're guessing with this. So brain size ratio, this thing's brain was larger in relationship to its body than anything else, including mammals. And things that were herbivores tended to have a smaller ratio. They were considered the lesser intelligent of the dinosaurs. Now I'm going to change the way that my audio is going. And the last thing I'm going to do is let you listen to the Parasaurolophus. Turn that on and turn this off. Sorry, I'm having to switch my screen around to the right thing. All right, now I have to mute my mic. Okay, so it wasn't very long, but if you missed the little opening thing, they had a very well preserved skull. They took imaging of it with technology like MRI, CAT scan kind of stuff. They fed all of the information into a computer. It reconstructed the interior part of that big crest off the top of its head. And then it told it to basically create an instrument, the resonating chamber. So the bass sound exactly like that, probably not exactly like that, but those are noises that the interior of that chamber could have produced. So that's all that I have for you. There's the assignment. Make sure if you did not do the assignment from Wednesday, the one that was on dinosaur evolution, that you get that done. Those are both, the opener and the assignment are closing at midnight tonight.